watching NRATV with Bill Whittle.
Hi everybody, welcome to Hot Mike. I'm Bill Whittle. Hot Mike is not with us today. He suffered a fairly severe exfoliation accident, but we expect him back tomorrow. Until then, we've got an interesting show for you, as always, another interesting show. But this one actually is kind of a breaking story of actual national news worthiness. CNN, you remember our friends at CNN? CNN is falling apart. It's falling apart right in front of our eyes. Just a few days ago, CNN was forced to remove a story about Donald Trump and the Russia connection. The whole story was written on the basis of one anonymous source, unnamed. So it's not exactly rock-solid ground. Enough evidence came up to show that the CNN story just plain wasn't true, and so CNN had to retract the story and fire 3 reporters. That was a couple days ago. Today, my friend James O'Keefe cracked open the lid on yet another one of these constantly covered up cesspools, because James O'Keefe and his Project Veritas, which means truth for those of you that don't know, James O'Keefe got hidden cameras inside of CNN, and he talked to a producer at CNN. This isn't just some person in the mailroom. This is a person who decides what gets on the air and not. And some of the things that James O'Keefe and Project Veritas recorded without his knowledge, of course, without the knowledge of the CNN producer, is enough to, let's just say it's enough to confirm somebody's prejudices. You know, CNN has had a problem with conservatives since the beginning of CNN. Ted Turner, who started CNN, is a big old liberal. He's married to Jane Fonda, who's obviously a big old progressive and a communist and a traitor. But that's not really for this show. In any event, CNN has been having problems with the truth, especially problems with the truth when it comes to conservatism, and especially problems with conservatism when it comes to gun rights. So much so that NRA's own Wayne LaPierre back in 2003, now that's 14 years ago, called out CNN for fake news long before anyone even had the idea of fake news. And just to remind you how on the ball the NRA is, let's have a look at that clip real quick.
No one fakes stories at CNN, and John Zarella definitely did not fake a story at CNN. You're very off base. I'm going to let you say your opinion, and let's have a conversation, but don't accuse our reporter of faking any stories, sir.
Let me say it again in front of the whole country. Your reporter faked that story yesterday. It deliberately misread the viewer. There's no way it could be true, and I challenge CNN to defend it.
The applause you heard at the end there was coming from the NRA annual meeting when they played that clip. I was in the room for that. That, number one, takes courage on the part of Wayne LaPierre, and it came out and basically accused them of faking the news. And she said, we don't fake the news here. And he says, let me just say this again slowly. You faked the news. You lied about the story. You knew it was false, and you lied about it. Well, now it turns out that we have evidence. Folks, there's an expression that those crazy, nutty kids use when they're out there on the internet, which is apparently a series of tubes that connects various computers and so on. But young people today have an expression, and it's something that I think is going to be ever more important in the future. And young kids today say, pics or it didn't happen. What that means is, if you don't have photographic or video evidence of something, then as far as we're concerned, it didn't happen. That may not seem right to you, may not seem fair, but if you think about it, all of the things that have landed and cost people in terms of politics and credibility have come from the fact that you could hear them say it. For example, the last election cycle, Hillary Clinton committed all kinds of perjuries and felonies, and so on. But these were emails. You never heard her. Donald Trump, on the other hand, makes an off-color remark, and because you could hear it was his voice, it had tremendous power. Now, I understand this, and the person who understands this even better than me is James O'Keefe. And we have somebody from Project Veritas. Before we bring him in, I want to just go to one more quote because I want to tee up this interview. This is from the producer. His name is John Bonfield. This is one of the people that the Project Veritas guys got on camera without his knowledge talking about the idea of faking news for ratings. So let's listen to what the CNN producer had to say.
Oh, it's a business. It's a business. People are like, the media has like an ethical... But all the nice, cutesy little ethics that used to get talked about in journalism school, you're just like, that's adorable. That's adorable. Yeah, this is a business.
Did you get that? Let me just repeat that for you one more time. It's a business. People are like, the media has an ethical... All of the nice, cutesy little ethics that used to get talked about in journalism school, you're just like, that's adorable. That's adorable. This is a business. It is a business. It's a failing business. And to help us take apart the failures of CNN and their enormously, rapidly evaporating credibility, we have Stephen Gordon joining us. He's the communications director at Project Veritas. Stephen, there he is. Hey, Stephen, how are you? Welcome to the show.
I'm doing great. How are you? It's been a good, busy day for us.
I imagine it has. Stephen, let's just set the stage a little bit and go back. I met James many years ago, not too long after. I was good friends with Andrew Breitbart, and James got to be as well. So for those of our viewers who don't know about James O'Keefe and Project Veritas, could you briefly explain to them the history of James O'Keefe and Hannah Giles going into an Acorn office? Acorn is was a very progressive kind of a community organizing kind of a series of offices around the country, semi-government kind of thing. James O'Keefe and Hannah Giles went in there with a hidden camera. Can you tell us a little bit about what they found?
I mean, and we did this in multiple cities like Baltimore and New York and LA, where we would go into these offices and we'd come up with some of the most outlandish things, such as we want your help to help us get underage prostitutes in, to child prostitutes, or to evade taxes, or to otherwise break the law, commit voter fraud. These were common things, and pretty much in every case they went along with what we suggested. But you used the right verb. You said were, because we shut them down. Acorn, at least as it was known before, is gone. It's bankrupt, and it's not costing the U.S. tax dollars hundreds of millions or billions of dollars.
Yeah, because you had pictures, Stephen. You had pictures, and those pictures are they're just insurmountable. They just simply cannot argue with them. And I have to say, too, it's an element of the genius of our late friend Andrew Breitbart, because Andrew Breitbart understood the media better than anybody I've ever seen. And Andrew Breitbart knows how the media functions, and Andrew Breitbart played them like a violin. He would release the first of these that James has done. You can see some of this stuff here now. He'd release one. She's laughing because they asked if they could set up an underage teenage brothel in their neighborhood. Oh, yeah, we can get you federal funds for that. We're going to have to call it something else, but we can help you out. James is dressed like a cartoon pimp, by the way. He's wearing like a purple suit with a feather in his hat. But Breitbart released one of these, and needless to say, immediately Acorn said, no, that's just not true. Then here comes the picture. Well, I suppose in one office maybe this happened. So then he released a second one. Well, maybe two bad apples, but that's all there is. Then he released a third one, and a fourth one, and a fifth one. I think there were 12 in altogether. And Stephen, the thing I find interesting about that is this. It's the serial denials, right? It was the lies are what they are, right? We didn't do it. Well, here's a picture of you. Okay, well, we may have done it that one time. Well, here's two others. Two, and that's the limit, only two. Well, here's another 7. Okay, we may have done it 7 times. This kind of thing is starting to happen to CNN now, isn't it? They're just being walked up against the wall by people like you who are showing us in their own words that these people consider the whole thing to be a game.
Heck, we didn't even start it this weekend. I mean, CNN own action started. We just picked up the pieces on this one. The drip started when Breitbart caught them and they had to take an article down and they had to fire 3 people over it. And BuzzFeed got a copy of the memo that said that they have to have their Russia stories approved by a VP. And so now we've got Jeff Zucker saying the exact opposite. That was their MO up until this BuzzFeed leak came out, that everything was Russia all the time. So we're just playing that, and we're not done. We're not done with CNN. We will have more drip on CNN, but we're going after the entire mainstream media, the gatekeepers who try to keep you from knowing what's going on. And we're not stopping at CNN. We're not stopping the Washington Post. And I just got off an interview with the Washington Post, and I told them they're on our target list. We're going after the whole corrupt system.
I'll say this to you, Stephen. I've said it to James O'Keefe in person many times. We get a chance to meet at a number of events. You guys are like the actual last American journalists in this country. You're the last people in this country, it seems to me, who understand that the entire purpose of the press is to comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable, regardless of what their political party is. The entire idea of a free press protects our society if the free press goes after the cancerous kind of corruption in the system. But if it turns out that the press is the problem, if the corruption's in the press, then the country doesn't work. The country has a kind of a philosophical AIDS, doesn't it, Stephen? Because the people who should be doing the patrolling are the ones who are the most infected. Those are the cells that are supposed to help us. They're the ones that are carrying the virus.
Exactly, and what you have to expose it. You have to expose the rot, and so you can cut it out. Our job isn't to cut it out. The American public can make their decision based on what they see. They can make their decision by clicking off their TV or not reading this newspaper, or using a different publication. But we expose so people can make a decision, so people can make up their own minds based on what we show them.
Well, when we come back after the break, we're going to hear, in their own words now, words of CNN through one of their producers that basically say the entire Donald Trump and Russia story is just a lie, and they do it just for the money, for the ratings. You don't have to take my word for it, and you don't have to take my opinion. You'll get to hear them in their own words on camera, thanks to Project Veritas, and we'll get to that as soon as we come back after the break. This is Bill Whittle's Hot Mic on NRATV.